What's the most ultimate petty revenge you've seen or been a part of? You youngins here might not believe it, but back in the early 90s, supermarket cashiers had to type every price in by hand. I was at a Vons in San Diego, walking toward the only open check stand with a single bottle of soda in my hand. Suddenly, this hoity-toity lady with a cart stacked to the top flew out of one of the aisles like a freight train and cut me off. "I'm in a hurry," she said, then looked away like she was annoyed that I'd been born. I looked at the cashier and he rolled his eyes and got to work. 5 minutes later, she's walking out the door and it's my turn. "You're good," says the cashier. "I put your soda on her tag." Damn, that felt good. Story 2. I used to deliver pizza for Domino's. It was my last shift and there was this house that was always rude. I called to ask what the house looked like and they said, "I gave you the address," and hung up. Never tipped, etc. I got to their house and they gave me a check for 1 cent less than what the total was. I said, "I'm gonna need the extra penny." They grumbled off and took their time hoping I would give up, but I just sat there holding the pizza. They finally came back all upset and gave me the penny. Note that they had no intention of tipping. They gave me the penny and I chucked it out into the street and left. They saw me do it. It was satisfying. Story 3. I occasionally deliver pizza as a part-time job. There's a customer that tends to pay with a big bag of change. I don't mean a full bag of quarters, I mean a bag full of dimes, nickels, and pennies. Since his meal typically costs about $20, the bag usually weighs several pounds. It is a total pain to count out all of the change, so typically drivers will just assume he has the right amount and leave. Usually he has just enough or maybe a few cents over. I don't think it's an innocent thing either, as he usually gives the bag of change with such a crap-eating grin. It is such a pain that most of the drivers know his address by heart and avoid going to his house if at all possible. I was having a bad night and by the luck of the draw got this dude's house. I remembered reading a post on r/petty revenge involving someone paying in a checkout line with a bag of change, and I knew I could use a similar method to take my frustration out on this guy in the pettiest way possible. I pulled up to his house and left the pizza in the car. I rang the doorbell and when he answered, I saw the large bag of change in his hand. He asked where his pizza was and I said, "New policy, sir. Gotta count it out before we can give you the pizza." So I sat down on his doorstep and started to count out all of the change. At one point, I even asked if he could turn on his porch light because I was having a hard time seeing. He did end up sitting there while I counted out the entire bag, even though it took 10 minutes. He ended up being about $1 over, so I started picking up pennies to give him his change back. Then he said I could keep the rest as a tip. When I gave him his pizza, he sheepishly told me sorry and then shut the door. The whole situation was incredibly awkward, and to my knowledge, he hasn't ordered pizza from us in quite a while. Oh well. Story 4. I used to deliver pizza, and one time I had a delivery to a brownstone house with a small stoop. It was either Christmas or Thanksgiving week, and we had snow/ice a couple of days beforehand. Well, I pull up and there must have been some sort of family gathering at the house who ordered the food, because there were a handful of people outside smoking and talking. When I got out of the car, one of the people on the porch opened the door and yelled into whoever who was supposed to come out and pay for the food. The woman came to the door as I was walking up the sidewalk. I was carrying a 24-cut pie with a couple of bags filled with wings or whatever inside. I had a decent amount of food in my hands, basically. But as I was walking, I slipped on ice and fell onto the sidewalk while everyone was watching. The massive pizza fell face down, box open, onto the icy sidewalk to the horror of the hungry onlookers. I remember being on the ground in the process of getting up, picking the pizza off the ground and hearing this woman screaming at me. She was so mad I dropped her food. She didn't offer to help me up, she didn't ask if I was okay, she didn't apologize for having ice on her sidewalk, she just flipped out on me. So now I'm standing there with a mutilated pizza hearing this old woman ream me out in front of her family. I apologized as soon as I fell, but she didn't care. For at least 20 to 30 seconds, she went in on me for dropping the pizza. So I threw the pizza at her feet onto the porch and got into my car and left. I took her chicken wings with me so I had some sort of proof that I didn't deliver the food and I didn't get paid for it. I have a lot of stories from delivering. For some reason, this stuck with me for like 10 years now. I cannot believe OP isn't following this up with "I got fired." Like, I get why OP did what they did, but I also understand why a manager would be like, "Buddy, you're out of here." I feel like this revenge is almost a step above petty, because it was for a not such a petty reason, and it was also not such a petty revenge either. Story 5. Knew a crazy kid in elementary. Kid jumped across the table and tried to choke me out. I got suspended because I instigated it by saying he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, when that was the only thing the kid ever talked about and was wearing a Cocoa Puffs shirt that day. Senior year of high school, kid was in my design class. needed to get a C or better in the final. Over the year, I found out the kid was taking my work off my share drive. High school IT was dumb and each kid's folder was public, and he was copying it. For the final, I purposefully screwed up the drawing in my folder, but the kid didn't double check it. He turned it in and failed and had to go back and be a super senior. I feel like OP could have omitted that first part entirely and still been completely fine. If someone is stealing your work in high school and you screw with it a bit and they still don't check, hey, that's 100% on them. Story 6. My roommate in college was a selfish jerk. Now, I've known him since preschool and we're still good friends, but he is one of those people you cannot live with. He attended the local tech school that is supposed to be a pipeline into the main school that third roommate and I attended. However, he barely went to class and sat around getting high and playing Xbox. My Xbox, specifically. That is where the story begins. He used to have friends over all the time and mostly they would get baked and play Xbox in the living room. Now, I don't like having a TV in my bedroom, so I set up my flat screen and Xbox in the living room. I would like to note that both he and third roommate had Xboxes as well, but they had theirs set up in their respective rooms. When the latest, at the time, Call of Duty came out, we would spend hours playing together in a big squad. That is until third roommate's Xbox got the red ring of death. Shortly after, my Xbox also got the red ring of death. Well, we think it's all good because jerk roommate has the next-gen Xbox 360, and it wasn't prone to the same issue. We'll just move his Xbox out to the living room so we can keep playing COD Zombies. The response third roommate and I got was, and I quote, "Nah, I don't want people playing it all the time because it'll break. Plus, what if you and third roommate are playing it and I want to play?" We were livid. How could he spend all that time using my stuff and not extend the same courtesy? At the time, I had supplied the router for the internet in the house, which meant I alone had the password. I also found out that you can block specific MAC addresses. Well, guess who couldn't connect to Xbox Live when he wanted to play online? I would turn it on and off sporadically over the next few weeks. I found out he spent like 4 hours calling both Time Warner and Microsoft trying to get the issue resolved. Eventually, he started to put 2 and 2 together about when it would go out and come back. You would think I would stop, but I adapted. I found out that you could open a port to remotely access your router from the internet. At the time, I had a BlackBerry, which could load the HTML router config page. Thus, I started turning off his access when I was gone. I was away one weekend at our rival school and shut him down from 3 hours away. To this day, he still doesn't know it was me, and I still go over to his house and hang out on the weekends. Screw you, dude. I know they taught us sharing in preschool. Story 7. My roommate and her SO loved doing elaborate jigsaw puzzles. After I found out she canceled our lease, leaving me 1 week to find a new place to live, I threw away one piece of 2 different puzzles they were working on. Before you ask, she was able to do this because I was 17 and not able to legally sign a lease. Ooh, this is beautiful revenge. That would be the most aggravating thing in the world. Story 8. My neighbor's dog craps in our yard all of the time. It wouldn't be a big deal, except he never cleans up after her. I finally had enough, so I decided to go with a classic. I put a flaming bag of the dog's crap on his porch, rang the bell, and hid in the bushes. When he answered the door, I finally got my revenge by having an affair with his wife for the last 3.5 years. This is a joke answer, I think. But if at all true, definitely not petty revenge past the dog crap part. The affair with the wife? Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't sound like petty revenge to me. Story 9. Boss paged me on my wedding night. Yeah, bad on me for leaving the pager on, but in my defense, it automatically turned on after charging, and I wanted to have a full battery before setting off on my honeymoon trip. He did it as a joke, but it came at an inappropriate moment. We had a page only if something's on fire policy, so I had to call in even though I had just got married and was about to go on a 2-week vacation. When he answered, he laughed so hard I just had to do something about it. So when I got back, I programmed the mail servers to call out on their phone lines and hit his pager with dial-back numbers for frisky phone services at 4 a.m. every day. His wife got this pager before he did one time and saw a text message that said something like, "I love how you described how you would bang me, Jerry. Call me back when your wife's gone for the day." Wife was not amused. She thought he'd been calling phone operators and tore him a new one. He knew it was me but was too stubborn to ask me to call it off. So it kept up for weeks until he finally figured out where the script was running from and used it to page me instead. We had a back and forth pager war for a while, but then it all screwed up when an actual data center emergency happened and one of us ignored the page thinking it was the other pranking him. That ended the fun. Story 10. My little brother and his girlfriend came to stay at my house for the weekend. The girlfriend was super self-centered and obnoxious. When they left, she forgot her clothes and toiletries because she left them sprawled all over my bathroom. About a week later, she and my brother moved into an apartment together. After he paid for the moving truck, deposit, and utilities, she cheated on him with her ex and kicked him out of the apartment. This left him broke, homeless, and heartbroken. In the days after the breakup, she kept calling him and emailing him several times per day, demanding that he ask me to ship her clothes and toiletries back to her. My brother called and pleaded with me to ship them to her so she would stop having a reason to contact him. Now, being the really loving sister that I am, I gathered up the really important sweatshirt, shorts, underwear, shampoo, conditioner, soap, and razor. I folded everything nicely, and then I wrote a nice note apologizing for taking so long to mail them to her, and I let her know that I hope all is well. The note was written in permanent marker, and the paper happened to be resting on the really important shirt when I wrote it. Unfortunately, the ink bled straight through the paper and onto the shirt. Oh, also unfortunately, the shampoo, soap, and conditioner caps weren't tightly secured on the bottles, so the contents leaked all over the clothes. This also further spread the ink. The most unfortunate result, though, was that her razor didn't have any sort of protective cap or container and left little slashes all over the front of the really important shirt. She received the package. My brother never heard from her again. The way OP wrote this just sold the pettiness for me. Ooh, I can taste it. Absolutely well deserved. You cheat on someone, you face some consequences. Sometimes they don't come from where you expect them. Story 11. My wife used to keep these little Godiva chocolates that she likes in her desk at work, but started noticing some of them going missing, and figured it must be someone from the overnight cleaning staff taking them. Fed up with losing her not inexpensive treats, she decided to get revenge on the choco thief in question by replacing the good chocolates with little squares of chocolate laxatives that look just like real candies. The next morning, she saw several of the laxatives gone, and then from that day forward, was never missing any chocolate again. Story 12. A horrible former coworker always claimed that she worked way more hours than she actually did. And when she was at work, she just browsed Facebook all day. The doctor/owner was very hands-off and just let her do whatever she wanted, despite me going to him with proof. So I decided to take revenge. She was not computer savvy at all, so I removed Internet Explorer from her desktop and installed an identical icon that, when clicked, would instantly restart the computer. It was so satisfying when she would forget and click it, losing anything that she would work on. She would always grumble and complain about the virus on her computer. I started a new job about 3 weeks later, and when I left, it was still giving her problems. Story 13. My mom and dad. This happened when I was in my late 20s. My mom and I were in the car. My dad called and they started bickering with each other. My mom got irritated and hung up on him. He called her right back, and when she answered, he hung up on her. Didn't even say a word, just waited for her to pick up and hung up. It was so petty and hilarious to see my parents acting like children. I couldn't stop laughing. They've been married over 35 years. I still get tickled when I think about that. Story 14. I lived in a cheap, crappy apartment with roommates and we all worked in fast food. Money was tight. One roommate ended up unemployed for a few weeks and then got a job as a bank teller, making much better money. However, while unemployed, she had missed a rent payment, and we scraped it together to cover for her. 2 weeks into the new job, she gets her first paycheck, and obviously, we're expecting immediate payback. Day one, she says something along the lines of she couldn't do personal business or like cash or check during work, so she could pay us in a couple of days. The Friday she was supposed to pay us, she comes home with a big shopping bag. She casually mentions that she can't pay rent yet because she had to buy new work clothes. When roommate and I got upset, she went total jerk on us. She said, "You don't understand how to work a professional job because you only work in food service." Basically told us we would get our money when she felt like it. That weekend, she misplaced her name tag required at work. She spent hours searching for it. At some point, I came across the name tag in a random spot, but I said nothing. She kept searching for it all weekend and was panicked that she would look bad to her boss, etc. I never moved or took the name tag, but the whole time I did know where it was. She never found it and had to get a new one. She also never paid back the rent, and we kicked her out a few weeks later. How do you not have the decency to pay back your roommates when they cover your rent? Are you kidding me? This person absolutely deserved this one incident. I'm proud of OP too for not just taking the name tag and hiding it because that would have been, I don't know, a little mean-spirited for sure. But just knowing about it and not telling her, I think fits perfectly into the realm of petty revenge. Story 15. During my freshman year of high school, I was in a biology class that was made up of mainly juniors. This one guy who sat next to me would always be a jerk during class. I always did well on the tests, so he would look over and copy the answers from my Scantron. I'm pretty sure he didn't realize that I knew he was cheating off me. Well, one day I got fed up with this guy messing with me and cheating off me. So, next test comes around and sure enough he starts copying my answers. I finished the test and so does he. He gets up and turns his test in and comes back to his seat. I looked him in the eyes and proceeded to erase my entire Scantron. I then retook the test, this time marking the correct answers. The look of panic in his eyes was so satisfying. He ended up making a 2% on that test, and then he never cheated off me again. So Scantrons are multiple choice. How do you score 2% on a multiple choice test? I need some explanation here. This is either the most unlucky guy in the world or there was more to the test. Like a lot more. Story 16. I worked at a 50K plus tech company. I worked with a PM, Maggie, who misread my email and got her dates messed up. She scheduled a meeting for Thursday instead of Friday. When I told her she scheduled on the wrong day, she got mad at me and emailed all of my managers up to my vice president, 4 levels of management, to say how much of a troublemaker I was. It was her own fault for not being able to read, by the way. 2 years later, I have to work with her again and pretend I'm all happy and friends with her. 2 years after that, I quit and move on to a better company. I get an email saying that Maggie is applying to my new company and said I could provide a positive reference for her. I email the recruiter and blast all 6 years of crap on her and block her from getting hired. Take that, Maggie. I never forget. Story 17. This was my best revenge. I went through an awful divorce. My ex-wife cheated on me, told lies about me, and all throughout the divorce, I took the high road and was there for my kids. She disappeared off the face of the earth. Her birthday was only a couple of weeks after the divorce was final. As the kids were young, I was a good guy and purchased several presents from the kids to her. Among the gifts, I bought a necklace with a really big A at the end. Her first name is Anne. I had the kids give that to her, and she wore her scarlet letter all around town. Most people in our town knew what she had done, and some were even aware of the necklace. Yep, I made my adulterous ex-wife wear the scarlet letter. Story 8. Not me, but a friend's story from his time in the military. Receives care packages from grandparents of 7 pounds of homemade fudge and cookies, but immediately has to go on a long mission like 2 months long. Instructs his bunkmates to wait for his return and all will be shared. He returns and there's less than a pound left. There's initial outrage to be sure, but he's calm about it. You'd rather see his outrage than his calm face because that is when he's plotting your demise. Weeks and months pass and he has plotted. Finally, he's scheduled to be in the same vehicle as them. The night before, he chows down on 2 boxes of Oreos and a gallon of milk. Lactose intolerant. His head is sticking out the top hatch and made a seal with his belt and equipment. Just as they got too far to return, he lets loose the most vile, sickening flatulence, and he was happy to quite literally crap his pants. The guys inside ended up vomiting all over the inside of the vehicle and ended up having to pay back my friend the market value of the fudge, which he never got to taste again because his grandmother passed away before being able to make another batch. The gallon of milk is what did it there, by the way. Oreos are actually vegan. Anyway, this is vile, but definitely revenge and somewhat petty, I think. The last part really moved it away from petty for me because, dang dude, that sucks, but there's no way they could have known that. Story 19. So, this was in the video game EVE Online. The game has a PvP, player versus player policy of punish instead of prevent, meaning that anywhere in the game, anyone can legally shoot anyone for any reason. There are certain places where if you shoot someone first, then your own ship will be shot by invisible NPC police. However, there's a time gap between when you start shooting the innocent player and when the NPC police kill your ship. 10-ish seconds. However, there's a time gap between when you start shooting the innocent player and when the NPC police unalive your ship. 10-ish seconds. So players will gank other innocent players knowing full well they'll lose their own ship as a result. This is allowed and encouraged by the devs, and is easily one of the most defining features of EVE Online. So this one dude gets bored and decides to gank a very new player who is in a practically free ship. Keep in mind, the attacking player's ship is easily worth 5 times this new player's ship, as he's doing this as a troll. So 15 seconds later, there are 2 exploded ships. The new player just goes off, like a solid 15-minute rant of pure 13-year-old rage. He explains that this very cheap ship is his entire net worth, and that now he's quitting the game because he has nothing left. The attacking player actually feels pretty bad, and because EVE is notorious for not retaining new players, decides to reimburse the new player's ship. He gives the guy 100 million ISK, the in-game currency. Now, this is a huge amount of money to a new player, The new player could afford about 100 of the ship he just lost. This is enough to keep a new player going for months. Then, 30 seconds after giving the new player the money, the old player gets a notification. New player has placed a bounty on your head for 100 million ISK. The new player took every last cent and used it to put a price on the old player's head. Now anyone who destroys the old player will get the bounty. The new player then logged off. I can't recall the chat logs, but they looked something like this. Old player: hey, sorry about your ship. I gave you 100 mil to keep you going for the next month or so. New player has placed a bounty on your head for 100 million ISK. New player has logged off. This is the perfect petty. This is the perfect one to end on. What beautifully petty revenge for it to A, be in a game, and B, to be out of someone's goodwill almost. Like, it's almost not even worthwhile revenge. I think the old player actually dealt with this correctly and got kind of screwed. But at the same time, if you're gonna troll a newbie and they troll you back, hey, what you gonna do? You reap what you sow and all. Anyway, as I said, that will be the one we'll end on. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next one.